Inviting us to take part and present here. We really appreciate it. As you can see from the title of my talk, if you fall into the intellectual mind 16 quadrant, I think you'll enjoy it. If you're a sensual or emotional person, I'll try my best to keep it interesting, but no promises. What this talk will look at is how do we unlock insights using technology and data. And specifically spatial data, as this is hopefully a 20-minute talk, so we want to limit it to the spatial data that we have available. And we pride ourselves on being able to do a lot with different varieties of data. Everyone's talking about big data at the moment and all the potential that has to unlock insights, but we also feel that's important, but the smaller data sets with fewer variables can also be very valuable in finding insights into your business and your customer. And so these insights will be looking at hopefully answering or shedding some light on the following questions. Who's my customer? How well am I meeting their needs? And what are they saying? And to do this, we're going to be looking at new technology. It's basically a lot of computer processing power, a lot of statistical and GIS software packages, some unique data sources. It's data sources mainly based on the census data, but which we update annually to try and reflect changes in movements, and we use property databases to keep it accurate as best we can. New vehicle sales data, we've also got access to those figures. So we're going to look at use those data sets, and we're going to look at some social media. We just heard today quite a lot about how important social media is and how socially connected we are as people. And again, just to confirm, it's just focusing on the spatial data aspect. So the journey we're going to look at is kind of going to start at the very beginning. What happens if you don't have any data, or you're going into an area which you know very little about? And then we're going to slowly build on that as we add more and more data into the mix. We can show you what are the kinds of things we can do with that analytics and that data. So I know there's probably a lot of products out there that are able to give you demographic data on areas, but one that we offer is called Footprint, and it's a very nice self-service web-based solution which gives you decent demographic and store location data on your most popular brands in the country. There's the Fourways area in Joburg, and they're the different shopping centres, and I've just overlaid Pick n Pay stores, brands, those outlets onto the map. If you click there, you'd be able to change it to demographic data, and then you get a report on who are the people in the households living in that Fourways area. You can see it's a fairly wealthy suburb with about 43% earning between 51,000 and 68,000, and 15% earning above 68,000 Rand a month as a household. The racial profile of the household adults is mainly a white area, and we can also look at employment status. That includes people on social grants as well, 90% just about 90% economically active, and the age profile of the area is fairly evenly split between the different age ranges that we can see there. So if you don't have any data, then this might be one option to look at. But and then obviously we can give you a table in terms of a cross-tabulation of income and age as well. So you can see what percentage of households and fall in the different income and age brackets. Moving a little bit further on, if you have access to your store location data or your brand's location data, as well as maybe some of your competitors' store locations, that's quite easily accessible, and we've got a database of geocoded business addresses, and so we're able to kind of answer the question of how accessible are you to your customers? Are customers able to access your brand or your shops easily, maybe also relative to a competitor? And so we've developed something called our Brand Saturation Index, which attempts to answer that question. This is an example using two popular South African brands. Brand 1 is Steers and brand 2 is Debonair's. And you can see the Steers brands are the green circles, Debonair's brands are the purple or the pink squares. And just from that map, it's not very easy to see which areas have better access to Steers than others, or which areas have better Debonair's access compared to Steers. And so the brand saturation index that we have helps interpret that a little bit, and there you can see on the top over. I'll do this side as well. There's your red heat map. That gives you very good steers access. Those areas there and there and there, those are pockets with very high access to the steers brand. As it gets to colder colors, your yellows, your greens, your blues, your access to that brand is decreasing. The same with Debonair's. You can see there's your best access to Debonair's, and again, as you get colder, the access decreases, or you've got to drive further to get there. So when I speak about access, I'm talking about distance to the store. But I think the real interesting part comes in contrasting those two heat maps, and now we can see which areas have better access to which brands. And so the red and the orange colors are steers dominated or easily accessible areas, and you can see there's the southern Joburg CBD is very it's dominated by steers, or much better access to steers. There's Randburg as well, and Rivonia area as well has got enough steers access relative to Debonair's, and also at the airport there's a very good steers coverage. As you kind of move out into the west and the east, Debonair's access starts to pick up, and that's in blue, which says that those areas are better covered by Debonair's relative to steers in this using this data that we have. And what's interesting is we found that for all the customers we've done this for, this map correlates very strongly with their market share in those areas. So in areas where there's a high concentration of stores, we often find that their market share is very large in those areas. And in areas, say here, your steers market share might be a lot lower as well. So it correlates quite nicely with their market penetration figures. So moving further on now, that was just basing analysis on the location data of the stores. Now, if we can bring the customer into the picture, with the big data we're talking about, there's much more emphasis on loyalty cards. People are collecting much more data on their customers, and you might have data on where your customer lives, which stores they use, and how much they spend at those stores. And so if you have those variables, we can do some nice results or nice analysis with it. Unfortunately, that data is very private and confidential, so we haven't been able to show you real customer data with real stores. So we've simulated some data just to show you the ideas behind what it is that we like to do with this type of data. And so here's a simulated data where you've got 4 stores, store A, B, C, and D. And customers are mapped as dots. And so your store A customers are in red, and B's are in green, C's are in blue, and D's are in that purple color. And you can see that store A's customers tend to come from its catchment area around here. But you do get the odd customer who's coming from across town. Maybe it's like the Eastgate Mall, driving in because they like it, as we saw in the Vox Pops. And so and also what we've done is we've got access to the spend at the brand, and so we've done an overlaid grid, 3 by 3K, 3Ks by 3Ks, and so you can see where the bulk of the spending is coming from those red pockets there. And as it gets to cooler colors, you end up with much less spending at the brand. And so what can we do with this type of data? We can do a lot of stuff, but I'm just going to look at 2 examples today, and that's looking at under and overperforming stores, and we can also see if there's maybe a pocket of untapped potential that we can look for in terms of maximizing customer value. So are your stores, how are they meeting the customer's needs? And the way we do this is in a couple of steps. The first step is we would draw your catchment areas around your stores. And so there's your store A and B and C and D's area, and you draw your catchment areas. Once those are finalized, you can then look at the movement of customers between stores. And we call this our loss gain matrix, and it kind of measures how loyal a customer is to each of the stores, as well as how dependent a store is on its local area for its sales. And so the way you'd interpret this loss gain matrix is this column here. These are all the customers in store A's catchment area. And of all those customers, there turn out to be 97 of them. Of those 97, 61 use store A. So that gives us store A a loyalty of 63%. 63% of the customers in its area actually made use of that store. 30 of the customers in store A's area kind of defected to store B, and then 3 each to C and D. And so you can see by each column, you can see how loyal that area is to its local store. The best performing store in terms of loyalty would be C. Of those 61 customers, 79% or 48 shopped at its local store, and it didn't lose too many to the other stores. And so that's how you'd interpret the columns. In terms of the rows, where does store A get its customers from? Well, 61 come from its own area, as we've seen, and then 4 come from store B's, 2 from C's, and 3 from D's area. And so that 61 out of the total of its 80 customers belonging to the store come from its area, and so on each row we can get what we call a dependency measure, which kind of determines how dependent a store is on its local area for its customer base. And you can see it depends. Some types of industries would prefer that to be high. They want, for instance, in the motor dealership, if you maybe some OEMs in the motor dealerships want a dealership to serve its area, and they don't want it to go and poach sales from other areas. But if you're the shop, then maybe you don't want a necessarily high dependency on your area. It might be nice to have customers coming in from other areas as well. And so store C again is the winner here. It's 42% in terms of relying only on its local market, and you can see it's getting quite a few customers, 37 from store B's area. And so this matrix is very useful, as it can tell us how are customers moving between your stores in your brand. You can often pick up on problems. If a certain area, if the loyalty is very low, and if you find those customers going to another store, there might be a problem there to be alerted to. We can then also look in terms of the catchment area at the target market and how the brand is penetrating that target market. And so we can count the number of households in each of the areas, and then depending on the product profile and the buyer profile, we're able to then determine how much of those households are in the target market of this product or brand that you're measuring. And so for store A, it's got 1,000 households in its area, of which only 500 are in the target market. And there's 97 customers that actually live in the area bought at one of the stores. And so that's a 19% penetration into its target market in store A's area. And so you can see again, store C is coming up good at 24% penetration into its area. So you can see that store C is doing very well there. Store D has the lowest penetration into its market at 12%, which is much less than the average, the overall average of 17%. And so when you pick up something like that, store D, what's happening? Maybe you can go back here and say, well, what's happening in store D's area? Are the customers loyal? And you can see that, yes, of the 36, 23 actually did buy store D, which is 64%. So that is still quite loyal. The problem is they're not buying. But when they do buy, they do go to store D. So that's a good thing. But the problem is they're not buying. So maybe that's a marketing opportunity or promotional activity that needs to take place in that area. Another example of using that kind of data is maximizing customer value. And if you've got that customer data, you can build up a very good profile of who the buyers are, who's your target market in terms of income, at least, of your customer. And you can see that is your the spend. There's your different income categories across the horizontal axis, and the height of the bars represents your average spend at the brand for those customers in the various income classifications. And so you can see it's that band there of customers in the 20 to to 20 to 40,000 rand per month, that's your target market. And using that, you can then go back to your map and say, well, where do those customers live? And is there a space where they aren't actually spending what we'd expect them to spend? And so in this area here, you can see that those customers fall into the target market of that product and brand, and yet the size of the man represents the spend at the brand, and you can see there's very, very small men in this region, which says they aren't spending what we'd expect them to at this brand, and that might be an area of potential. Maybe there's a cross-selling opportunity or a promotional activity that needs to take place that's closest to store D's area. Maybe they need to be encouraged to start marketing more into those neighborhoods. And so that helps us also answer the question, are you meeting your customers' needs? Maybe there's a strong competitor in that area that you need to take into account as well. Or maybe there's some specials or promotions you need to put through. Next section is another spatial type of data that we have access to, and it's Twitter data. So we've been collecting Twitter data coming out of South Africa for the last year or so, and we're only going to focus on those tweets that have a geolocation. And so what Twitter allows you to do is to almost eavesdrop on your customers' thoughts and emotions and feelings while they're inside your shopping center. And so what I've done is I've used our platform to extract geolocated tweets from the following list of shopping centers. And if you put those, for example, there's the Tiger Valley aerial shot, and if I overlay the tweets that occurred in 2013 in coming out of Tiger Valley, that's people on their phone or mobile device tweeting, you can see that's where the tweets came from. Each of those red dots would represent a tweet that came out of the shopping center. And the dots are great, but it also helps to maybe look at a heat map to kind of see, and the bulk of the tweets is coming from that entrance there. There's a pocket there and a pocket there as well. And so you're able to see where are people tweeting inside of your shopping center. This is what the tweets look like, the pattern in terms of daily and weekly cycle. If you aggregate the year together, this is the horizontal axis is your day and your hour of the week. Vertical axis is how many tweets occurred in that day and hour interval in 2013. And you can see there's that daily cycle where there's not many people tweeting at 3 and 4 in the morning in your shopping centers or in the vicinity of the area. And as people start waking up, the tweets tend to peak around lunchtime, and then they drop off again. Monday is the slowest day, and it slowly increases through the week, and there's a nice peak in Saturday just before lunch, and then Sunday is fairly good, but there's an earlier peak, and then it tails off a little bit. So that's what the tweets look like, coming from that group of stores. I also did a little bit of a sentiment analysis on those tweets, measuring the emotions of the tweet, attempting to do that, and there's various scoring algorithms you can use to score tweets in terms of sentiment, and you get a sentiment score. Positive sentiment, here are some of the positive sentiment tweets that I pulled out. Love your brand, love your style, love your work, you are a true inspiration. That was one of the tweets that came out with very good sentiment. The other one was, love the fresh sea breeze over Cape Town City Bowl this morning, amazing, love it, give me additional strength. So the positive tweets. It was harder to find the negative tweets though, because they needed to be censored very carefully. So I pulled out the two of the safest I could, but this is two interesting ones. Just at Beep in Beep, worst pizza experience I've had in a long time. Service terrible, wrong orders, and a hair, seriously. Another one, so frustrated with Beep right now. My brand new Beep crashed twice with hard and software problems. Screw your products, I think is what it says at the end. It's been cut off. So those were the two of the safest negative sentiment tweets that came through that I could show in polite company. And what I did was I looked at the average sentiment in each of those in each of those centers for the last year in 2013, And the size of the dot represents the number of tweets. So you can see that Sandton City turned out to have slightly the highest sentiment score on average, and it had the most number of tweets coming from the vicinity. And there you can see the sentiment as it goes down. Interestingly, N1 City Mall there's quite a dip there, and so I thought, what's going on with N1 City Mall? Why is everyone so negative in there? And so I pulled out the tweets and I had a look, and it turns out one of the Cape Town City Council people, who is in charge of disaster management, was tweeting in the vicinity of the mall, saying things like extremely dangerous fire conditions today, or very rough seas and high weather, and please be on alert. And so all those very dangerous words were coming through with that negative sentiment. And so it's not that people are really unhappy. A lot of that drop there was because of the tweets that were coming out of the vicinity of that mall because of the disaster management area, the spokesperson at least tweeting from that area. What's also nice is to look at where are these positive and negative tweets coming from. So I've compared the two distributions of positive tweets and negative tweets. This is just for Southgate. And you can see your positive tweets are coming from that area. It's kind of in that parking lot, and mainly in that parking lot, and then this entrance. And then the negative tweets are predominantly in this area and for some reason over here. And so if you wanted to go further, it would be very nice to see, is it a store, what's going on in that region in terms of why is there lots of negative tweets coming out of that area of your shopping centre. And so this is a very nice kind of analysis, as to try and understand what your customer is saying while they're in your centre. This kind of tool is very useful. Also, what I want to do is show that you can actually zoom in and click on a person and see what they tweeted and see what they like to tweet about. But I thought I'd use something less controversial than shopping centres, so I looked at politics, being in an election year and all. So I did a search for people speaking about the various political parties, and I zoomed in on one area and picked one tweet, and the tweet that came out was, "Vote ANC so that we can build a better Nkandla for all." And it was by Sir Nyasha who said that. And if you click on Sir Nyasha, what we can see is his clout score is 38. Clout, if you're not sure, is kind of a measure of your influence on social media. Barack Obama has a 99 clout score, so Sir Nyasha is a bit less than that, but 38 is not bad. 50 is considered fairly influential, 38 is not bad. And this person likes to speak about Zimbabwe, cricket, tennis, Serena Williams, and Pakistan. So you can get a bit of an idea about who this person is that's tweeting inside of your store and what they like tweeting about. Where is the future going? And I think the future from a spatial point of view is just starting. Actually, technology is just being developed in the States, which allows stores or shopping centers or malls to track customers using smartphones. So if you have a smartphone like this and you leave your Wi-Fi on, they can track your movements within the stores, as in shopping malls. As you walk around, you are being watched. And because your phone is sending out Wi-Fi signals all the time, and it's got a unique ID, and so you can actually build a spatial profile of customers. Maybe the day is coming back where we'll be able to say that, Mrs. Hanson's husband stopped off at the baby aisle and stood in front of the nappies for 5 minutes, and they must have had a new baby. Or Mrs. Peterson went to a bunch of baby shops looking for a present because we could track her movements, and she went from this shop to this shop and to this shop. And so it's this kind of, it's a little bit scary, but it's a brave new world, I guess, and so it's going to be a lot harder to hide. And then this kind of technology allows you to create individual profiles of customers. Which entrance do they use? Where do they go? Which stores do they walk at? Which mall, which aisles do they stop at and look at? So obviously there's very strong privacy concerns about this. A lot of customers are very unhappy about this kind of technology, and often they'll switch off their Wi-Fi signals when they go into the centers that have this kind of technology that is employed. And so I really think that the spatial data is actually just going to go really increasingly in leaps and bounds, and there's going to be a lot of things that can be pulled out of it in future, which might be able to answer those questions of who's my customer and how am I meeting their needs. So yes, thank you. That's me. Thank you very much.